Hey team, welcome back. So I'm pretty sure that you're really excited because in this video lecture, we're gonna start setting up our environment so that we can do Redux coding. As I mentioned in my previous lecture, at the end of each lecture, I am going to publish the branch associated with it. So please go back to the branch if you run into trouble, if something doesn't work as it should. And I promise you that you're going to be okay. And 99% of the time, you're going to find your own problems. Whatever it is whatever mistakes you might have made. So anyway, without delaying this anymore, the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to start installing a bunch of stuff that we need so that we can actually do this, right? So give me just a moment because I literally have very clear notes here because when I was learning this, the main obstacles that I found was that some of the instructors, not all, some of the instructors that I was learning from, they didn't really have a method. And it wasn't until I found a couple guys that I really learned from that actually I'm going to give you their names at the end of the course in case you want to go on and dig deeper into Redux and React. Anyway, the first thing that we're going to install is Redux. So we're going to do npm I for install Redux. And actually we're going to install a couple things in one single line of code. And by the way, with npm you can install more than one package in one single line. So we're going to install Redux, which is the library on its own. Then we're going to install React-Redux, which is what helps us hook up Redux with React. And then we're going to install Redux Thunk, which is a middleware that we're going to be using, which is basically what we're going to use to dispatch the let's say the reducer action onto our store. So these three things are essential for us to move forward. So please go ahead and install them. It might take a few seconds or it might take a few minutes. So you can actually pause the video while I do this. I'm actually going to show the whole thing. I'm not going to pause my video. Actually, okay. So now that you have this installed, and before we even move forward, I do want to show you the versions that I got, just because if you're watching in the future, you need to know what versions I'm working on. And you have two options. If you're watching in the future and there's a new version and everything works great, perfect. You can use a newer version. If you're watching in the future and you install a newer version and then out of sudden things are not working as they are working in the video, then you either have to install the versions that I have here. For instance, Redux 5.0.7, React Redux 5.0.7, Redux 4.0, Redux Thunk 2.3. And you can force install these, which is the other option, so you can at least follow along. And then if you want to, when you move to the newer version, then you're going to have to investigate what was deprecated and deprecate it for, and then you're going to have to update your code base that way. All right. Hope that makes sense. The other thing that we need to install is Axios, and we're going to do the same thing, npm I Axios, and this is going to install the Axios library, which is what we're going to use to for our operations of get, post, patch, delete, etc. And now that we have Axios, this is the version that I'm working with, the 0.18. And again, I already explained this, but if you want to force a version, you basically type ampersand and then type the version that you want to force in case you want to go to a previous version. All right, cool. So now that we have this in place, we're going to start setting up everything that we have to set up for Redux. Okay. So in order for us to do this, we need to start by wiring up our store. Okay, and if you remember my previous lecture, The store is at the core of everything, and configuring the store is what's going to allow us to, in the end, use Redux properly. So in the source folder, we're going to create a file called store.js. All right, and once you have that, we need to import a few things so that we can actually configure our store. All right, and all these things we're gonna import from the packages that we just installed. Import this: create store, apply middleware, and compose from Redux. Then we're gonna import thunk, which is the middleware we're gonna use to dispatch. Import thunk from Redux thunk, and then we are going to import something called our root reducer, which we don't yet have, but we're just gonna do the import anyway. Root reducer from, and actually reducers, and I'm actually following my notes, and this is how I know where this is, but I don't want to confuse you, because then you're gonna be like, what, you're some sort of path wizard and you just know that that's where it's gonna be. No, I don't want to confuse you like that. That's not fair, and I'm sorry for that. I'm just really following my notes because I want to be very methodical with this piece. So we're going to create a folder called reducers, just like what we are typing here, and then inside of reducers, and I'm just gonna start with that for now. In our reducers folder, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. We're gonna create a new file called index.js, okay, and then we're going to import something called combine reducers, and this is just so that we can wire everything up without the app breaking from Redux. Okay, and then once we have this, then we're going to export default, and we're gonna export the combine reducers, which actually will take as parameters an object, or as a parameter is going to take an object that contains all the reducers that we're going to be creating as we move forward. All right, and now that we have this in place, we can actually import it, because since the combined reducers is coming from Redux, then it knows that the root reducer is actually coming from the combined reducers, which is the meeting place for all of our reducers. Okay, so let's keep on working on our store now that we have this out of the way. Now the store, the first thing that you want to set up in the store is the initial state of your application, and we're gonna use a constant here, and we're gonna call it just that, initial state. I'm actually really excited about this part, guys. I really am. Then the next const that we're gonna define is the middleware that we're gonna be using, and I'm actually teaching this exactly as I learned it. I swear to God, exactly as I learned it. And once I refer you to some really amazing React instructors, you'll see what I'm saying. Just in case you want to go deeper into React, which I intend to go deeper to as well, but just in the context of building SpringBoot apps. Okay, and then the other thing that we're going to define here is the store, and we're gonna call it let store, and you'll see why. And this is one thing that I had to do a lot of research on my own, but anyway, you'll see what I'm saying later on. And then we're gonna export the store, export default. Perfect. All right, so with this in place, Then we are going to set up our store, and we're going to configure it so that it works with Chrome, so that it works with the Redux DevTools extensions, and so that it also works with other browsers. And I'm only going to go into the configuration of the specific configuration for Chrome, and then I'm just going to do a generic setup so that it works with other browsers. If you don't do this the way I'm setting this up, this is not going to work with let's say Safari or Internet Explorer or Firefox or whatever. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up an if statement, an if else, and actually we can get this here. And what we're gonna do is that if the window, and this is again, this is vanilla JavaScript, if the window dot navigator dot user agent dot includes Chrome, right? Basically, if the user agent includes Chrome, so that will identify that we're using Chrome, then we're gonna create a store there. And then basically it's a store, and this is where we're gonna use the create store that we imported. And the create store takes the following parameters, right? It takes the root reducer, it takes any middleware that we might use. In this case, it's gonna be Thunk. And then it's gonna take the DevTools that we installed in Chrome. Okay, so I am going to pass it the root what am I doing? I'm gonna pass it again the root reducer, right? We're gonna pass it the initial state too. Forgot to mention that preloaded state or the initial state. Then we're gonna pass it the enhancer, which is the middleware that we created. But this is something that I learned from another instructor, and this is basically for us to when we're thinking about the future. And what we're gonna do here is that we're gonna use the compose, and we're going to compose our state by passing it the apply middleware that we brought in. And then what we're going to do is that we're gonna pretty much pass an array of middleware, and this way we don't have to commit to this middleware array here to have a specific length, right? Because this is again, this is ES6 syntax. So basically we can add additional middleware here in the future if we want to, and it's gonna be part of how we compose our store. And the other thing that we're gonna use to compose our store, we're gonna put a comma here, and then we are going to go to our application. And actually, no, actually I don't even remember if I'm not running our application. So anyway, I'll show that. Give me a second. Let me see if I can do this here. Yeah, actually that's gonna work. Give me a second. I'm just gonna start our application here. Sorry that I'm sneezy, guys. I'm actually coming down with something. So when you do inspect here and you go to Redux, obviously we don't have this set up now, but it gives you the instructions on how to set up the store. If you click here, it's gonna take you to a website that actually tells you what you need to include there. And here, the only thing we need to grab is this code here, right? Because this is basically how we're setting up our Redux store. So basically we just need to add a comma here because this is another set of parameters that we're passing, and then we're gonna pass exactly what we copied there. And if you want to read up on that a little more, then you're more than welcome to do so. Now this is when we are in Chrome, and now that we did that, I believe that we should get something different here. Oh no, we are not there yet. Sorry, I don't want to confuse you here because we still have to do some additional work. Then the else statement is going to be pretty much the same thing as here. Store, blah blah blah. But the only thing is that we're going to compose this without the extension. And the reason for this is that what am I doing wrong here? Oh, I'm missing a okay. The reason for this is that we don't have these extensions, but if we try and load this into another browser, this is going to be null, and it cannot take this as null because this is not going to be present in any other things that is not Chrome. In any other web browser is not Chrome. This is the reason why. So perfect. Right now we have created a store and we're doing good. And I'm just gonna take a quick second to look at my notes. We already created the reducers. Perfect. The main reducer. And now what we need to do is that we need to go to app.js and set up the store in our application. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do in app.js is we want to set up our imports. And actually, let me go ahead and read my notes so I can follow this to a T, so that there aren't any so that I don't bring confusion to you guys. Okay, import curly braces, and the name of what we need to import is called provider. Okay, so provider, just like this, from React Redux. And this is the part that allows us to hook up React with Redux. Now, the provider is basically how we define the store that we're going to use for our application. So now that we have the provider here, we have to wrap our entire application with the provider tag. And again, I have no shame in admitting to you that I'm reading this out of my notes. A lot of instructors are like, yeah, you know, I just know this, and I learned it because I'm super cool. I mean, I don't want to offend anyone, but I have no shame in saying I have my notes, I have my game plan, and I'm trying to follow it, so you guys are not confused. That's all I'm saying. Because sometimes when you're trying to do things off the top of your head, then you start with the back and forth, and then you forget things, and then you start coding everything without an order. And for beginners, like some of you are, then that just confuses you and helps you lose the flow. Okay, so I just want to throw that comment there because I want also for you guys to take a mind break here. Okay, so now that we have our provider tag, then that provider, we have to declare the store. Okay, so that provider takes a prop, and this is a prop, takes a prop, which is the store that we just created, right? And I don't think it auto imported this one. So basically here we can use our IntelliSense in our path to actually import our store. Okay, so let me see. So basically we're gonna import store from, and this is some of the extensions that I recommend that you folks to use, because if I do dot and slash, then it actually finds the file here, and then you can save it. Okay, and now that we created a store, it should all be good. Give me just a moment. I'm just gonna see what the next steps are. Now that we have wired this up, then we can go and start creating our reducers and set up our initial state. All right, so but I don't want to do this right now because I think that this lecture has already gone a little long, but I do want to show you this. Now we have our store set up, and as you can see, we have our initial state, and this is what you should be looking at now that we have completely set up our store. And the error that we're having here is that we don't have any type of reducers because we haven't passed any reducers to the root reducers, which is what we're gonna do next. All right, but right now, if you're here, your project is set up with Redux. Congratulations. This is a very important step in our project. All right, so I'm gonna stop the video here, and then in the next video we're gonna start sending data to our API, just so that we can start seeing some connectivity there. And then in the video afterwards, I think that we're going to start working on setting up our errors reducer, which is going to be the first reducer that we're going to be using in this project. Thank you very much for watching. I'm really excited, and I'll see you in the next one.